Pearl is to the manosphere what the OnlyFans girl is to the porn addict. Hello, good people. It is Todd Shannon, data scientist, social commentator, getter of buckets, and today we're talking about Just Pearly Things. Pearl, I don't know what Pearl's last name is, but she runs a YouTube channel, very popular channel across the social media platforms, all social media platforms, where she talks about all things kind of men, marriage, relationships, the manosphere. You know what I'm saying. If you clicked on this video, then you likely know who Pearl is. And she had an interesting conversation with Andrew Klavan that I just found too juicy to pass up. And we're going to watch a little bit of this conversation. But I just want to give you my general thoughts about Pearl, because I realized something about Pearl that I hadn't realized before. And I used to watch Pearl's content. I used to watch it because I found it kind of intriguing. I always find content about relationships and marriage intriguing because this generation really needs to have these conversations because their relationships are broken. And I used to think that she made kind of valuable contributions to this space, albeit she was a little bit misguided in some of her perspectives. But now I've come to realize that actually Pearl is actually quite nefarious. And that's why I started this conversation the way I did. I think she is to the manosphere what the OnlyFans girl is to the guy, to the incel who can't stop watching, corn. So we're going to listen to a little bit of this conversation, and I'm going to chime in. I'm going to explain to you why I think her perspective and her content is so nefarious. Let's get into it.
Thanks for having me.
So what is it now? Basically, well, why don't you do this? Why don't you explain to me, to us, what it is that you're saying that makes people get on your case so much?
Oh gosh, the list is so long. Well, I think men are better at everything than women.
Okay.
So people think that, I'm kidding for that, I'm not, but I think that makes people mad. I think marriage is a bad deal for men today in 2024. I'm working on a divorce documentary. So I went, and then I do a show in London. I interviewed over 1,000 women about dating and relationships. So I used to argue with people all the time, but I recently stopped doing that because it was just tiring. It was really tiring.
All right. So let me just stop right there. And I probably interrupted with my little sound effect. The first thing she said, I think men are better at everything. Okay. Now, here's the thing that's interesting about this comment. Andrew's actually being quite charitable to Pearl. He's trying not to be argumentative or get into a debate. He's trying to engage her kind of silly and ridiculous ideas and her comments. I think she almost says these things to intentionally be inflammatory. I can't quite figure out what her perspective is, but saying something like men are better at everything, I think what she doesn't actually realize is that she is embracing a feminist perspective when she says that. And she claims, if you listen to Pearl's content, she claims to be very anti-feminist and anti-feminism. But that content, that men are better at everything, is basically a testament to the fact that she is at her core, I think, kind of a feminist. And this is why. You see, feminism is based on the idea, not just about women's rights, which are supposedly, I think maybe initially it might have started out that way, but feminism at some point morphed into females trying to take on more and more masculine characteristics and roles, and then trying to prove that women can be just as good in those masculine roles and that displaying those masculine characteristics as men, such that it essentially becomes a contest between men and women about who can be more masculine. You see all of the modern content as far as what we see in Hollywood when we look at all of these boss chick movies that no one likes and everyone hates. It's because they make the women very masculine. And I'll give you a very clear example of how this happened. Some time ago, I was watching one of the Spider-Mans, one of the Marvel versions of Spider-Man. I think it was the first one. And essentially, they got Aunt May. Instead of making Aunt May kind of this elderly, sweet kind of auntie with, sage wisdom, they tried to make her into some modern, Sex in the City type of chick with Marissa Tomei. And basically, Lucky, who's Iron Man's kind of right hand, is really interested in Aunt May. They don't have an Uncle Ben and Marvel's version of Spider-Man, but whatever. But he's very interested in Aunt May, and he wants a real relationship. And the Marvel movies are pretty PG-13, so they don't go into any detail. But it's implied that Lucky and Aunt May slept together, but that for her it was just kind of a casual thing when he actually wanted something much more. So you see, they're trying to give her this masculine trait of being able to have meaningless sex and be emotionally detached. And they think, this is my point here, they think that somehow upgraded Aunt May's character. They really think that giving Aunt May a masculine trait that is actually something that is not something that is actually something to be proud of or something to be emulated, not even by men for that matter. I mean, I know men can be emotionally detached, but that's because men are less emotional in general. And that's not necessarily something that you want to do in a sexual situation where you have relationships that you should be more committed to. So they had Aunt May emulate an attribute of masculinity that's actually not actually a good thing to emulate. And this is a classic example of how feminism tries to compete try to have women compete with men about who can display the most masculine traits, even when those masculine traits are not actually good. And that's because at the very core, they actually believe that men are better, right? So the obvious absurdity about this is that to say men are better at everything is absurd because it assumes that men and women are supposed to do the same things. And one of the things that a man can't possibly be better than a woman at is being a woman. And because Pearl doesn't understand what that even means, she makes this silly comment. But let's let Andrew chime in, and because he starts to hit the nail on the head. He does it in a ginger way, but he's trying to get to the root of what she's saying without being insulting. But let's listen.
So when you say, let's start with the men and women, when you say that men are better at everything, it certainly seems that men are better at all the things that men do, but they're not better at mothering, are they? They don't.
There it is. They're not better at mothering. Of course they're not better at mothering. You know why? Because the whole purpose of the differences between men and women are aimed at the rearing of children, and that's the main reason why we have the male-female complementary dichotomy, and it most shows up when it comes to the interactions with children. In other words, men can't be mothers. And here's another place where Pearl doesn't realize that she has embraced the feminist mentality, is that she apparently doesn't think that mothering is that important. This is the same message that feminism teaches women. Being a mom, I guess that's okay, but boss chick, going to work and 9 to 5 and climbing the corporate ladder, that's what really feminine actualization is all about. Why? Because they're interested in competing with men at things that men do and not understanding the true value and purpose of women. Let's see what Pearl says.
Don't have babies as well as women do.
Well, that's the only thing they can't do is have a child. But if you look at single father homes, they fare very similar to single mother homes.
Well, yeah.
Or better than single mother homes.
Uh-huh.
So I was trying to think of anything that women were better at. And when I tried to look up data, I just couldn't find anything.
There are a lot of things that women are actually much better at. There again, women are much more emotionally intelligent, much more in tune with the pain of other people, which is a very important trait to have. But once again, she says kind of dismissively, oh, well, that's the only thing. That's the only thing. They can't have children. That's kind of a big thing. That's kind of a big thing. Let's listen further.
So if you look at kids because I was like, okay, we're the nurturing ones, right? But then we're more likely to kill infants and the elderly.
We're more likely to kill infants than women are more likely to kill infants than elderly people are likely to kill infants.
No, we're more likely to kill infants and the elderly.
Oh, and
okay, all right. Now I got to bring you in close because that comment, and this is what I have to tell you, friends. This is why it's important to understand that just because someone's kind of YouTube famous or, social media famous, that doesn't mean that they're not kind of stupid. You don't actually have to be smart and competent in order to be popular. Because what Pearl doesn't understand when she says, and there again, Andrew, he kind of chimes in and he says this in so many words. He says, that's because women are the ones taking care of the babies. Right? You can't, of course, men are not going to be the ones killing a child when it's almost never the men who are actually dealing with and rearing a small child. The younger a child is, the more the responsibility falls on the women, and women have much more difficulty and emotional distress dealing with children when they're young, especially when those women are not emotionally developed themselves. And so this is just a matter of sheer numbers. This has nothing to do with the fact that women are, which is what she's implying, moronically, might I add, that women have a higher propensity to harm children than men. As a matter of fact, if you think about as children get older and other types of abuse, that the exact opposite is true. Men are much more likely to sexually abuse or to physically abuse. And so she doesn't take that into account, which is, unfortunate. But let's go back.
The elderly, I see, but that's kind of an unfair stat, because it's like women take care of the elderly and infants more, and who wouldn't want to kill them? I mean, they're incredibly annoying.
But you could look at abuse too, because that was another thing I noticed on my show. Like, I interviewed over 1,000 women on dating and relationships, and I thought it was crazy how many women told me they were abused. And then I would ask a couple questions, and generally it was kind of nonsense, most of it. So, like, they never filed a police report. They would always, like, one girl I had on told me that she was pushed down a flight of stairs, for example, but she kind of forgot the part where she was trespassing, where he told her to get out. So he was trying to get her out of the house, stuff like that.
All right, so here's another example of Pearl not understanding that the cross-section of women willing to have a conversation with someone like her and to interact with her in any serious way is actually a fairly narrow band of the female population. And she doesn't realize that she is basically oversampling. Because let's just be honest. Like, someone like my wife would never be having a conversation with Pearl because she's not a serious person. There again, I mentioned it earlier because she is to, once again, to the manosphere what the OnlyFans girl is to the porn addict. It's almost like there's a similar phenomenon that happened that the guy John Money, who was a pervert, who was basically the architect of modern gender theory. He had this so-called study, where he showed that that men had a propensity for all of this sexual deviancy. But what basically he had done is he had surveyed and talked to a bunch of men that were in prison, and not realizing that men in prison are not representative of the male population in general. So even if his data were true, it wouldn't scale or extrapolate that men have these sexual deviancies, because men in prison are, by definition, really deviant. And so she doesn't realize that just to be plain, the cross-section of ditzy women that she talks to, she mostly talks to women who are the types of women that make for good content for her channel, but aren't actually representative of women more broadly. She doesn't talk to any women who are primarily religious, who have a specifically religious and conservative view, which leads me to kind of my next point, which is kind of what I've been hinting at. Pearl is to the manosphere, like I said, what the OnlyFans girl is to the porn addict in more than one way than one. It speaks to the dangers of what I call godless conservatism because in many ways, Pearl is quite conservative in some ways, and she has certainly a more traditional view of gender roles, right? Which kind of leans to more conservative views. But because she is not a person that really believes in God or believes in, I don't know if she doesn't believe in God, but she's certainly not religious. So she kind of has a nebulous view of God. And this is what happens when you have a person who can identify problems but can't provide any reasonable solutions because she doesn't have the right perspective in a holistic way, from a metaphysical or from a worldview perspective, right? So she mirrors the OnlyFans girl in more ways than one, because see, the OnlyFans girl, if you watch them on the whatever podcast or whatever, they swear up and down that they can, sleep with 100 men or, provide, explicit images of themselves all over the internet and justify it because they're making money and say, oh, I'm just providing a service to these men and I'm getting paid for it. So who's it hurting? And then she says, well, when I'm ready, I'll be able to settle down with the man and he won't care that I've been ran through by 200-300 men. And the levels of delusion, they don't realize they're debasing themselves by doing this and therefore making themselves less attractive to men, even though their product is primarily for men and they have men kind of basically lusting after them in droves. They don't realize that the reason why those men are coming after them is because she is taking advantage of their debased desires, and that in their heart of hearts, they don't really want women like that, but they're just yielding to that to those impulses that they haven't mastered. Pearl does the same thing, but instead of appealing to the sexual desires of men, she appeals to the desires of men of a false or a faux masculinity, a false sense of importance, and it's really the root of real misogyny, right? Because if you think about what she's advocating, she's basically telling men that women are superfluous and only really good for sex. I even heard, Pearl, say often, it's okay if women actually, if men actually cheat on women. That's also okay. So, in many respects, Pearl is, like I said, she's appealing to a kind of a perverted form of masculinity, one that it actually is misogynistic, the one who actually think that women are just men with breasts, objects of desire that really can't do anything that men can't do themselves. Think about the sort of message that sends to a young woman. You think a man that loves his daughter wants someone like Pearl to be his daughter's mom and to teach her that she is basically a second-class version of a man? And that the only way she can make herself useful is to be a sexual object and to, if he's a, quote, high-value man or a successful man, to let him cheat on her? What type of man wants someone like Pearl to be his daughter's mom, or his son's mom for that matter? In the same way, what type of man wants some OnlyFans girl who's been ran through by 100 guys to be his daughter's mom? I rest my case.
But if you look at abuse stats, when you look at one-sided abuse, it's 70% women.
That women do a lot of the abusing, you mean?
Well, most abuse is mutual, meaning they're both like hitting each other.
Yeah.
There's more nonsense. I'll let it continue.
Yes.
But you look at one-sided abuse, women are more likely to abuse.
So when you talk to just about anybody about their mother, if you talk to men especially about their mother and you insult their mother, you usually wake up in the hospital. I mean, people really love their mothers. And so it seems to me that there must be something special there that women do. I mean, I'm in this wonderful marriage, and my wife has made a home for me and raised children. Our children are wonderful, and we have this, and I don't think I could have done the things that she did. In fact, I'm sure of it. I know I could not have done the things that she did and the way the generosity that she has. I've never met a man who has the generosity of spirit that not only my wife has, but women like my wife had.
This is 100% true. It's the reason why women are, a good women at least, are executives in the home, why they are beloved by their children and especially by their sons. And this leads me to believe that Pearl just had a terrible relationship with her mom. But that's another question.
So is there something there that you're missing? I mean, it just seems like a big blanket statement, I guess.
I was just trying to find any data that supported we were better at anything. I couldn't find any.
Uh-huh.
I swear I didn't start with this opinion. I just would think, well, are we better at cooking? And then all the top Michelin chefs were men.
Yes,
are we better at raising kids? Are we better with babies? But then we're more likely to kill infants.
Again, I've already explained why that anecdote is stupid, but let's continue.
It's almost unheard of for a man to kill an infant in the first year. It's almost 100% women that do it.
It's incredible to me that people with this sort of ignorance. Pearl literally has millions of followers on social media. It's incredible.
Yeah. Again, how many men are taking care of children in their first year?
I
mean, but then you could look at the elderly, same thing.
All right. So
he already addressed that. How many, if you go to a nursing home, how many of the nurses in a nursing home do you think are men? 10% maybe? And Andrew Klavan is being, there again, he's being much more gracious than she deserves. But I shout to him because what she's saying is so absurd. He really could blast her, but he's trying to hear her out. Let's continue.
You know, I don't want to argue. You think that men are better at everything. So what is your conclusion from that?
That they're better at everything.
No, but then you said that men shouldn't get married. Marriage is a bad deal. This is the thing that actually kind of attracted me to what you were saying in the first place. I've said that ever since feminism, that if you marry anybody, even feminist adjacent, you're probably going to get a bad deal because men give up something very dear to them when they marry. They give up their sexual freedom, which for men is very important. And so they give up something. What do they get? Now, I got a home, I got a mother of my children, I got wonderful children, I got companionship, I got love. You know, many wonderful things that I got in getting married, but I'm not sure that as many guys are getting that today. But you seem to be saying that even if you get that, you're kind of getting a bad deal.
What % of women do you think are marriageable under the age of 35?
Oh,
debt-free.
Yeah.
Debt-free.
Yeah.
No tattoos. No sex work. In shape.
Okay, so those are actually that's very odd criteria for being marriageable. No tattoos? I didn't know a tattoo disqualified you from being wife material. Debt-free? I mean, it's nice. I mean, you don't want to be taking on a whole bunch of debt. I mean, are we talking about $1,000 on a credit card? Or are we talking about $50,000 in revolving debt? We're talking about like she's got a loan on her car. You know, that's debt. Is it secured by an asset that's worth more than she owes on it? That's kind of different. So this is very odd criteria in the first place. But let's okay. We've already established that, you know, Pearl's logic is not very sound.
Uh-huh. And
what percent?
Do you think it's smaller? Well, you tell me.
No, these numbers were confirmed by an actuary.
Uh-huh.
In a world, it's called A World Without Men.
Right.
5%.
5% you think are marriageable? What percent of men are marriageable?
No, if 70% are overweight just by that logic.
So what percent of men are marriageable? No tattoos, not overweight. Okay, overweight. I think that if you looked at some sort of random subjective table, right, of obesity based on your height, I think there are a lot of women who are perfectly normal looking that those charts would say are overweight. So this is an absurd criteria, but you know, what she doesn't say is how many men meet that criteria. It's very bizarre.
Well, we're not measured by the same things.
Why not?
Because men and women are different.
Men and women.
So men and women are different, but so then why are you comparing women to men on the basis of skills they can execute? If you understood that men and women are different, then there again, this is the danger of godless conservatism. You understand that the differences between men and women are purposeful, right? And it's not about who can do what better. It's about whether or not we can function in our role and be a star in our role in order to glorify God in the marriage relationship and to raise new people. I find Pearl's content quite pathetic and actually quite demonic, if I'm being quite honest here. There again, I used to think that Pearl was making reasonable contributions to the to this kind of the manosphere questions, questions about relationships, the red pillars, all of these entities out there and these conversations that people are having. But there again, I just view her messaging every bit as destructive as the E304 out there, basically showing her tatas on OnlyFans and charging men money to do it. She's just doing it in a different way. But what are your thoughts, friends? Let me know. I'll be curious to know what your thoughts are. Put them down in the comment section. If you like this content, please like, share, and subscribe. Till next time, my friends, God bless you.